They said humans couldn't survive long on this station's food. But I'd been eating the same recycled protein slabs for 3 years straight without dying. Yet, every alien swore it would eventually kill me. The words escaped my mouth as I stared at the same tray I had every day. Grayish protein loaf, a small cup of nutrient broth, and a slab of something pretending to be bread. It wasn't good, but it was edible, and I had long since stopped complaining to anyone but myself. Nobody else wanted to sit with the station's lone human mechanic, anyway. The eating hall was a low-ceilinged chamber, its metal walls constantly humming with the vibration of the nearby reactors. Aliens of a dozen species crowded at other tables, each speaking their own tongues, clattering utensils that weren't quite designed for human hands or human food. I sat in my usual corner, a dented metal bench, in the shadow of a flickering light strip, far enough away that I could eat without being stared at. I was used to the stares. Most of them meant nothing, just curiosity. A few were hostile. It didn't matter. I worked on their ships, kept their precious haulers flying, and that was enough to make them tolerate me. My tray clattered as I set it down, pulling my jacket tighter against the ever-present chill of recycled air. I'd been through this routine so many times it felt like ritual. Fix engines all day, eat alone, sleep in the tiny berth they'd given me at the edge of the docks, repeat until my bones rusted like the ships I repaired. My fork had barely touched the slab of protein when the room changed. You don't think about silence in a place filled with clamor, but when it hits, you notice it immediately. Conversations faltered, utensils paused, and every pair of alien eyes seemed to glance toward the entrance. I ignored it at first. New arrivals weren't my business until heavy footsteps, deliberate and measured, approached my table. Then someone sat down across from me. Nobody ever sat down across from me. I looked up slowly, expecting to see some bored technician who'd lost a bet, but instead, a stranger met my eyes. He wasn't from any crew I recognized. Broad-shouldered, taller than most of the aliens here, but still undeniably human. I froze for a second, my mind scrambling to process that simple fact. Humans didn't just show up out here. We were rare, too rare to bump into one on a fringe station like this. His clothes were travel-worn, a patched spacer's jacket stretched across a muscular frame, dust and oil stains clinging to the fabric. His face was weathered, a short beard framing a mouth set in a faint, unreadable line. He had the look of someone who'd been through hard things and seen worse. I wanted to say something, anything. A greeting, a question, maybe even a joke, but all I managed was, "You're human." His lips quirked just slightly, the closest thing to a smile I'd seen in a long time. "So are you," he replied in a calm, low voice, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the galaxy. It wasn't. The nearest human colony was light years away. I glanced around the hall, realizing that the aliens were still watching, curious, but wary. 2 humans in the same place must have been a rare spectacle for them, too. My fork stayed suspended in midair as I asked, "Haven't seen another of us in years. You lost or something?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his gaze sharp but not unfriendly. "Not lost," he said, looking for someone who knows how to keep old ships alive. "Word is, you're the best mechanic on this station." My gut tightened. Nobody usually came looking for me unless something was broken beyond reason. "I guess that's me," I muttered. "Who's asking?" He didn't give a name immediately. Instead, he pulled a small device from his jacket pocket, setting it gently on the table. It was old tech, scarred with age, lights flickering faintly on its surface. I recognized it instantly, a transponder from a class of human-built starships, long considered extinct. My breath caught in my throat, he noticed. "You've seen one of these before," he said quietly. Not a question, but a statement. My hand drifted toward it, stopping short of touching. Memories I hadn't wanted to dig up stirred at the sight of that device. Stories of vanished fleets. Humanity's long retreat from the stars. Ships abandoned or destroyed when no one had the means to keep them flying. They're all gone, I said after a moment. No ships left, not like that. His eyes locked on mine, steady and certain. Not all of them. I leaned back, heart thudding once in my chest. The noise of the dining hall was starting to return, but my corner felt like a bubble outside of time. This stranger had just dropped a spark into the ash heap of my quiet life, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see what it might ignite. But I knew one thing for sure. Tomorrow's lunch wasn't going to look like today. Single quotes as. The stranger didn't eat. He just sat there while I picked at my protein loaf. His steady gaze locked on me, as if waiting for a decision I hadn't realized I needed to make. My appetite faded fast under that weight. It had been years since I'd spoken more than a few casual words to anyone at this table. And now this man, this other human, had come crashing into my solitude with a relic from a dead fleet in an unspoken proposition. Finally, I shoved the tray aside and leaned forward. You've got about 30 seconds to tell me what this is about before I walk out of here, I said, my voice low enough that the nearest aliens wouldn't hear. He didn't flinch. There's a ship, human-made, older than both of us, left floating near the black edge of this sector. Systems fried, hull fractured, dry, barely holding, but it's alive, barely. His hand tapped the transponder on the table. This came from it. My breath caught again, despite myself. A functioning human starship was a rarity worth a fortune. But this sounded like something more. You came all the way here for me. He gave a single nod. Every other mechanic I've met didn't know the tech. They learned on alien designs. You're one of the few left who grew up working with old human systems. He paused, his eyes scanning my face. You can bring it back. I barked a dry laugh before I could stop myself. If it's as dead as you say, there's no bringing it back. You want miracles? Find a priest. No, he said, unshaken. Just an engineer who still remembers what humanity used to build. The words hit harder than I expected. Memories of home, of my father's hands guiding mine through the guts of an old cargo freighter, came unbidden. I hadn't thought about Earth or my family in years, pushing it all down under routine and cheap meals. But now, here was a man offering me a link to it all, wrapped in mystery and danger. Why you? I asked finally. Why are you the one chasing this? His eyes darkened, a flicker of something heavy in them. Because I found it first. And because what's on that ship isn't just tech. It's history. Maybe hope. The last word hung between us like a challenge. Hope was a luxury out here on the fringe. Most humans wandering this sector weren't looking for it. They were just trying to survive. My fingers drummed on the table. Even if I say yes, I've got a job here. These aliens keep their haulers running, because of me. I already paid off your next week's shifts, he said flatly, as if anticipating my protest. My head snapped up. You what? He shrugged. Your foreman was happy to rent you out for the right credits. Said you needed a break. I cursed under my breath, earning a sideways glance from a reptilian dock worker 2 tables over. This stranger had just bought my time without asking me first, and I wasn't sure if I should be angry or impressed. Either way, it left me with fewer excuses. Fine, I said finally. Show me this ghost ship of yours. If it's junk, I'm gone. If it's worse than junk, you'll wish you'd left me eating alone. He gave me that almost smile again. Brief, but real. Deal. We left the hall together. The murmur of alien voices following us out. The docking level smelled of coolant and scorched metal, familiar and grounding under my boots. He led me past the haulers and barges I knew well toward a small worn shuttle with no identifying marks. As the hatch opened, I hesitated. Name, I said, holding his gaze. If we're doing this, I need a name. He paused a beat, then said simply, call me Rook. I followed him inside. The hatch sealed behind us with a hiss that sounded uncomfortably like a door closing on my quiet life. Rook's shuttle was nothing fancy, a cramped cylinder patched with mismatched plating, interior smelling faintly of burned insulation and old coffee. Still, it ran quiet, a smooth purr beneath our boots as we slipped from the station's shadow and into the star-speckled dark. I stayed silent, arms folded tight across my chest, watching him work the controls with an ease born from too many long-haul jumps. It felt strange, this heavy quiet between us. Nothing to do but think about where we were headed and what we might find floating in the black. He finally broke the silence as we cleared the last traffic lanes. "You ever bring something back from the dead?" he asked, eyes never leaving the nav display. I snorted. Every ship on that station was halfway to a scrapyard when I started. Most just needed parts, patience, and a bit of luck. He seemed to consider that, nodding as stars streaked past the port. "This one's different. The hull's from the old expansion, maybe even earlier. I got her running long enough to drift, but the core is unstable. Every system is running on ghosts and hope." I caught the way he said it, like he'd tried everything. "Short of a miracle. You risk your life for history. Or is there something else on that ship?" He gave me a sidelong look. Maybe I just wanted to see another human work a miracle. I didn't have a good answer, so I let it hang there. The only sound the gentle hum of the engines. The trip was shorter than I'd expected. After a blur of empty space and calm silence, Rook eased back on the throttle and pointed out the viewport. There she was, even from a distance. I recognized the bones of a human starship, battered and scorched by decades in the void. Old-style drives, heat scoring along the hull, windows black as coal. Something twisted in my chest, a memory of bedtime stories about humanity's great leap before we lost our grip on the stars. We docked with a dull clang, the airlock shuddering as seals bit down. The moment the hatch slid open, the chill of recycled air and the faint ozone temps of dying electronics hit me. "Stay close," Rook muttered, swinging a heavy lamp over his shoulder. The ship was a tomb. Dark corridors, panels pried open, wiring trailing like spilled guts. But it was more than salvage. It was a time capsule. The walls lined with faded insignia and old human script. "She was called the Diligence," Rook said softly, voice bouncing off the cold metal. "I found her drifting past the Perseus marker. Something kept her alive out here, barely." He handed me the lamp. I ran my fingers along the nearest console, feeling the faint hum, a stubborn pulse in the machinery. "Power's intermittent," I said, "but not dead." "Well, you said the core is unstable. It spikes if you try to bring up the drives. Environmental's barely holding. Life support's tied to a backup grid." I crouched by the main access panel, prying it open with practiced ease. Inside was a tangle of wires, torched and patched 100 times. Whoever kept this thing running had done it with scraps, prayers, and desperation. "You've been in here," I said, glancing back at him. "You know your way around more than you let on." He just nodded. "I've been trying. But this tech's older than me. Needed someone who speaks its language." I traced the wires, heart beating faster with every familiar click and spark. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home, not because of the place, but because I had a purpose. "We'll need to reroute power from the lateral arrays," I said. "Could buy us enough stability to reboot the drives. If the backup grid fails, we lose life support and lights." "I'll handle the grid," Rook said, kneeling across from me. "You take the drives." The silence that followed was different, filled with the rhythm of work, to humans bringing a forgotten ship back from the edge. And as systems flickered awake one by one, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Not just in this ship, but in the universe. The hours that followed blurred into a rhythm older than either of us. Tools exchanged with a grunt. Wires stripped and twisted. Silent calculations scrawled in the dust on ancient consoles. I lost myself in the work, in the electric pulse of systems half a century out of date, until the broken corridors and echoing bulkheads felt like home. Rook and I barely spoke, but every small victory a flickering display roaring to life, a stubborn coolant line finally sealing made the ship a little less dead, and made our partnership feel a little less accidental. The drives were the heart of it all. Human-made, brutal, stubbornly efficient, and on the edge of meltdown. I crawled beneath the deck, sweat running down my brow as I bypassed burned-out relays and patched nanofiber with old copper. Rook's voice sounded over the intercom, strained but steady. Grids holding. Give me 20 more seconds on the vent cycle. Copy, I grunted, bracing as the core rumbled. For a moment, I thought it would all go sideways, a whine rising from deep in the ship, every warning light flaring, but the old routines kicked in. I dialed back the main feed, let the heat bleed away, and the growl subsided. The hull creaked, like something waking from a long sleep. On the bridge, we stood side by side before a battered panel, dust motes spinning in the cold light. Try the main ignition, Rook said, voice careful. I reached out, hand shaking a little, and keyed the sequence. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, with a shudder that ran through steel and bone, the Diligence's engines came alive. Every screen on the bridge flickered, then held steady, glowing blue and gold. Systems began to report in navigation, sensors, even the old music archive. The ship hummed, not quite as she must have in her prime, but alive all the same. I slumped into the captain's chair, staring at the lights. She's flying, I said softly. Rook grinned. A real one this time. We did it. But it wasn't just pride I felt. It was something deeper, a quiet sense that we'd given more than a ship a second chance. What now? I asked, unable to keep the edge of hope from my voice. He glanced at the star map pulsing on the main screen. I found her. You brought her back. This ship isn't just history. It's proof we're still out here, still human, even when the universe forgets. I looked at him, understanding dawning in the quiet. We show them. Take the Diligence back to a port. Let people see her fly again. Or farther, he said, eyes bright, past the fringe, to the places they say we lost. Let this be the start of something new. The weight of years eating alone in crowded halls, of days spent fixing ships that weren't my own, lifted just a little. For the first time in forever, I could see a horizon beyond the next job. I rose, looking around at the battered bridge. She'll need work, I said, smiling despite myself. Old ships always do. Rook nodded. Then we'll work together. We set course for the nearest beacon, engines thrumming beneath us, the void stretching wide and waiting. The Diligence was alive again, not just because of systems and circuits, but because two strangers refused to let history rust away in the dark as the stars wheeled past the glass. I realized that maybe for the first time, I was exactly where I belonged. Not alone, not forgotten, but part of something worth rebuilding. And as we drifted toward a future no one could predict, I knew I'd never eat alone.